Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Stephen King podcast. And this time it's kind of an anniversary because we are doing episode 60.
Woohoo.
Boy, that's a lot of episodes.
It sure is, man. And we're still talking to each other, which is good.
That's a good sign, yes. We're starting to get like an old married couple.
That's right.
Yep. And as you can hear, Louis is with me today. We are going to talk about The Dead Zone, and we have seen the Cell movie. And this one is only out on VOD so far,
Yep.
Which means you have to watch it on Amazon or in iTunes, or there might be other online services that have it. And it will be released.
Yeah, I think those are starting in July.
Yeah, it will be shown in selected cinemas in July, and also probably released like on DVD the same time. I know it's released on DVD directly here in Sweden on August 1st. That's pretty fast.
Yeah.
But we have seen it, and we are going to talk about it, and we are going to spoil it. So if you haven't seen it and don't want it spoiled, you should save this episode and maybe watch it when you have had the time to watch the movie. Okay, but as usual, let's start with the news.
Alrighty. And first up is a couple of items about the Mercedes trilogy, which is good news because the latest book, End of Watch, has just come out this week. And we're already hearing news about the TV series that they're working on. And the first report comes from the Hollywood Reporter. And they're reporting that the Mr. Mercedes TV series was set for airing in 2018, and this one's exciting because so far the pedigree of people involved with it, both in front of and behind the camera, is just excellent. I mean, you've got Brendan Gleeson, who's a great character actor who will be playing Bill Hodge, and I think he'll do a fantastic job. And you've got Anton Yelchin, who you might know as Chekhov from the rebooted Star Trek movies, is playing Brady Hartsford. So right there, some great casting. And behind the camera, we've got David E. Kelly, who worked on Boston Legal, Ally McBeal, and The Practice, plus, and we still like him, even though we weren't impressed with Under the Dome, Jack Bender from Lost. So
yeah,
he is going to write the first episode and serve as the showrunner for the series as well. So I'm not clear. That's 10 episodes. I assume it's just for the first book. Doesn't look like, I doubt if they're going to do the whole trilogy in one season. Maybe it'll be 3 seasons, which would be kind of cool, actually. One season for each book. And one of the other bits of news that we got, and I've never watched 24, so I don't know this actress at all, but I think, Hans, you might know her, is that Stephen King has mentioned that he would like Mary Lynn Raskubak, I don't know how you pronounce her last name, sorry about that, Mary Lynn, to play Holly Gibney in the TV series. So we haven't got casting announcement about that yet, and I know some people, fans of 24, are very familiar with her and say that she would be a natural for this role because that's basically the way she acts with her characters for the most part. So what are your thoughts on all this Mr. Mercedes news?
I think it will be great. I think, as you say, they are probably doing the first book as a first season, and if it's a success, I have no doubt that they will do both Finders Keepers and End of Watch as separate seasons to follow that one. And I think the casting is good. When it comes to the confirmed casting, I think that Brendan Gleeson will be perfect for Hodges.
Yep.
Anton Yelchin, when I first heard, I didn't think he would fit as Brady. But the more I see him, I think I remember him more from Hearts in Atlantis, where he's a bit younger. So I think I had that fresh in my mind and thought he would be too young to play the role. But when you look at photos of him recently when he's grown up. I actually think he will be good, and I keep seeing him with a shade did in when he tries to blow up the rock concert, and I think he will be perfect for the role. I think so far as how good they are as actors and how right they look for the part, I think they have nailed it actually.
Yeah, I agree with you. Both really solid actors, and as I said, Brendan Gleeson is a great character actor. So, and that's just the kind of actor that you want for this role. I guess the only thing I'm worried about is seeing him romantically involved with Holly's sister. That's going to be hard to sell, but I imagine now they will age that character up a bit more than the way King presented it to us in the book.
Yeah, and also when it comes to Marilyn, I think she's perfect. I didn't think about her when I read the book, but when I read that King thought she would be perfect for the role, I can only agree, because the way she plays her character in 24 is like Holly. So that I think she would pull off perfectly. One thing that
but we haven't had that. We haven't had that confirmed though, that she's
no.
Character. No.
But I think she could do it, and the only risk I see is that her character in 24 is special. So I think that if she plays this role the same way, you might, if you have seen 24, you might connect her to that part and think her name was Chloe in 24. And I think that you might be too much reminded of her and only see like that character has stepped in here. So that might be a problem, but I think otherwise I can't think of any actress that would be better cast as the role as Holly. So I think that would be great.
Well, fortunately, I'm not a big 24 watcher, so I don't have no clue who she is. So at least I'll be able to come into this if she's cast with a fresh and open perspective.
Yeah. So you will have to restrain yourself from watching 24 now.
Oh, that won't be hard. It's not my kind of show.
Well, okay, let's move on to the next film item, and that is It. And there's a lot of things happening here now with It. We have news that it will start filming in Port Hope this summer, and since when we record this, we are in mid-June, they will probably start filming anytime soon. And we have had some casting for it as well, and the first one of the Losers Club has been cast, Bill Denborough, and he will be played by Jaden Lieberher or something like that.
Names, you gotta love names.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And as I think it was you that commented that the photo we have of him, or that I have on the site, gives you the Children of the Corn creepy feeling. Yeah. But let's give him the benefit of doubt.
Absolutely. But doesn't it though?
Yeah, it could be from the new remake of Children of the Corn, definitely. I haven't seen anything.
Children of the Corn resurgence.
Yeah.
Or something.
Personally, I haven't seen anything by him, but so I can only go by his looks, and I have no problem with him playing that part.
Yeah, apparently he was in St. Vincent's Academy, and a lot of people saying he was fantastic in that. So that's good
great
to hear.
And we also have Owen T. Is that the right pronunciation? I think so.
Yep.
Who we will talk more about, because he also have a role in Cell, and he has been cast as the bad boy in It, Patrick Hocksetter, who is part of the group who bullies the Losers Club. He will be having a refrigerator full of animals that he killed, so that sounds like my kind of guy. And also it's hard. We saw him in Cell, where he plays a very different role. Some of you might have seen him in Bloodline. He's in the second season there. I have only seen the first season, so I haven't seen. I think he appears in the end of the last episode or something like that. So I haven't seen much of him either. But he has an evil grin on the photo I have on the site. So I guess that qualifies him. And the most interesting casting we have is that Pennywise will actually be played by a Swedish actor. I don't know how known he is outside Sweden, but he definitely comes from a known actor family.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, his name is Bill Skarsgård.
Yep.
And his father, Stellan, has been in a lot of movies, and I think even his brother is Alexander is probably even more famous. He plays the vampire in True Blood. We can actually hear him speak a lot of Swedish, so that's fun. And I think Bill will be good. We heard some comments that he looked too young. I am on I think the opposite. I think it's good because he has that mix as who was that who was cast but then didn't be cast?
Will Poulter.
Yeah, I think both of them have that innocent look, but still that evil look. And I think that it's better to have someone that look kind of innocent being very evil than like Jack Nicholson, who can look really evil and be evil. So I think he can pull it off very good.
I have no problems with his age either, because I mean, once they're in the makeup, you couldn't tell what the age of the person anyhow, right? Especially when they got the clown makeup on. I like his acting pedigree. Like you said, he comes from a family of solid actors. His dad, Stellan's been in the Thor movies plus a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
He's a great actor. So I'm really impressed with they got this actor to play the part. Of course, you as a Swede must be really happy.
Yeah.
For our listeners who don't know him, and I don't know him that at all either, he appeared in the Netflix series Hemlock Grove as well. So you might want to check out that series. I plan to do that myself and see if this guy's got any acting chops or not. Well, it finally came together. There's a little bit of a B-team feeling to this. I mean, I still think it's a bit of a step down from the initial people that they had with Cary Fukunaga. The actors that they're getting, for the most part, seem A-team to me. And so I'm really looking forward to this. I'm really glad that they've kept the two-movie structure, and hopefully it will play out well.
Yeah, and I must admit that when it comes to the actors and actresses, I am actually more worried about, for the second movie, who they cast as the Losers Club as the adult. Because as kids, and kids, you know, kids will be kids, and I think that it's more important that they got the right persons for them as grown-up. And I think we will probably have more of knowledge of the grown-up cast than we have of the young, because they haven't been in that much probably. And we can mention that also, that there has been circulation of other cast members for the Losers Club, actually for all except Beverly. And we don't know if this where this comes from, who plays who. Some names have been mentioned, but not who they play. So we don't know if those names are correct, and secondly, who they will play. There are lists online, but we don't know if that's just guesses that they will play a certain part. So hopefully we will get more clarification and confirmation on who will play who and in the Losers Club. Yeah,
for sure. And I think the thing that's most worrisome, though, but if they can pull the trick off, is the casting of these kids, because we've seen it with both versions of The Shining, that I think for both of us and for a lot of the other fans, in both cases, the kid that they cast to play the important kid role, Danny, was not a good choice. And I think more people had problems with the Danny that was cast for the miniseries than they did for the movie. But to my mind, they've still never nailed casting that character properly. And now they're trying to cast basically 10, 12 kids, because you got the Losers Club plus the bullies. And bullies seem to be easier to cast. But if they can pull it off, I mean, they did it with Stand By Me. So if they can pull it off here, this could be the setup for a really great 1-2 punch of movies. So we'll have to keep our fingers crossed. But yeah, I'm worried about these kids, because they're going to make or break this first movie.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's it for it.
That's it for it. So what do we got next?
Yeah.
Let's talk about some Reaper's Image. And Mark Pavia, who you may remember as the director of Night Flyer, was talking to Bloody Disgusting about his recent movie Fender Bender, which looks like something right up your alley, Hans.
Yeah.
And he's talking, he dropped a hint that he had a Stephen King movie in the works as well, or that he's trying to sell. But it's a different type of movie than just a single project. It's actually like a successor to the Creepshow movies, and it's supposed to be an anthology.
Yeah.
And he says the script is with Stephen King's agent. There's the normal back and forth going on there. So I guess they're trying to see if they can get any traction with it. Unfortunately, he doesn't tell us what stories are targeted to be in the anthology. I don't know do you have any further details on that, Hans?
No, probably Reaper's Image, since that's the title of the anthology movie. But we don't know the others. No.
Right. Well, it'd be a nice change of pace. I agree with his sentiment that it's been over 30 years since we've had a anthology film, though we did have Nightmares and Dreamscapes TV miniseries.
Yeah.
It would be kind of cool, but I don't know. Anthologies movies are a hard sell for the theater. I have a feeling that this would probably be a straight to streaming video on demand type of release, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, and I think it's a good idea, actually. I would love to see more short movies made, because there's a lot of short stories that would definitely be better to just tell as a short story than a full movie.
Right.
So I hope it pulls this off, and I wouldn't mind seeing it as even as a TV series, maybe a one season thing with say 10 episodes, and each episode being a short story adapted. And I think it would be fun if they did it like use the same actors and actresses and do different stories, and that would tie the season together, and they would still tell different stories, but they would use the same actor and actresses, or maybe a few of them being the same. So I think that could be a fun project. But as you say, it might be a hard sell. But I mean, if they could do Children of the Corn 58, I mean, why not this?
Yeah, well, I guess corn's cheap.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that would be, as a cable series. I like your idea of the American Horror Story reusing the cast for each story. That would be a neat little way to tie all the episodes together. Well, we shall see.
Yep. Okay, next up is the news that James Franco is once again going to star in a Stephen King movie. This time it's the adaptation of Drunken Fireworks, the short story about two families on a different side, each opposite sides of a lake, and they are shooting firecrackers and stuff to each other's. This was a short story that was in Bizarre Bad Dreams, and I know I think you listened to it as well as I did.
Yep.
And we were pretty unhappy with the narrator of that one.
Yeah.
I think it was a bit better when I read it for myself from the book.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if this could be a full movie. I think it would have to be pretty dragged out to fill a full movie. But
well, they can make the fireworks sequences last pretty long.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta admit, when this piece of news first broke, I was rather majorly surprised, if not outright stunned, because to me, and maybe like you, I'm totally tainted by listening to the audiobook, which I was really cold to. This just doesn't seem like enough of a story to be turned into a movie or even a TV movie. It's just it's pretty silly, like when you get right down to it.
Yeah.
It sounds more like a Saturday Night Live skit or something like that. I just don't think there's enough meat in this story to warrant making it into a movie, but because it's written by Stephen King, they feel that they can turn it. And I would think that maybe James Franco is probably the driving force behind this. He must see something in this story that he likes, because that is the one part of this news that actually makes sense to me, because the very thing that I talked about with 11/22/63 is his party animal characters that he plays on screens. I think this story fits his acting sensibilities much better than 11/22/63. So from that perspective, I actually think he will be really good in this movie because it suits him better, but it's not really something that I would be running out to my local theater to go and watch.
No, and I think that even though that might be more his character, I think that when I read the story, I assuming that he will play the lead role here. It isn't said who he will play, but I'm assuming that is the case. And I got the impression that he was more of a hillbilly kind of person, and I don't know if Franco is my number one choice for that.
I think it would fit him like a glove. I think he could put on a country bumpkin demeanor, no problem. So
yeah, and a straw in his mouth, and he'll be done.
Yeah. And maybe he'll get, what's that actress right now that's very popular, the comedian? She's in the Ghostbusters movie. Maybe he can play his mother or something like that. Or maybe he can get Kathy Bates. Yeah. That would almost make it worth it if he got
Maybe
Kathy
they could
Bates.
do it as a comedy.
Well, it is a comedy, right?
Yeah.
So I hope they do it as a comedy and not serious. Because if they try to play this serious, that's pretty silly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is a really broad comedy to me. So
we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. All right. So as we all know, Mr. King is currently touring, and Hans has got daily links up to all the stops that he's doing for End of Watch. And with that comes the satellite interviews that he does. And one of the ones that Hans picked out, which is a pretty cool one, is the one that he did for Rolling Stone. Basically, because he gets asked some questions that we haven't seen him been asked very often, or some never before. He talks about selfies.
Yeah.
People taking selfies of him, which is pretty good. What's the best advice you ever got, which I like? What are his heroes? He talks about a baseball player, which I don't really care about, but he also talks about Cormac McCarthy, Martin Scorsese. Interesting, his favorite book as a child, The 500 Hats of Bartholomew Cubbins by Dr. Seuss, which I remember. It's not my favorite Dr. Seuss story, though. I think I like Green Eggs and Ham myself. Yeah, and he lists favorite book, favorite city, whether he ever thought of moving to New York City, and what else we got? He talks about his work habits, talks about dealing with his pain, and the fact that whether or not his name or his work will stand the test of time. And of course, there's some political questions about Donald Trump and so forth, and I'm not really going to get into that. And he also makes a reference to End of Watch about the hospital room in which the Brady character is spending his time. So it's a good interview because it asks him questions that we don't normally see Stephen King ask. So from that perspective, I like it quite a bit.
Yeah, it's fun to have some. Usually when you do a new book or a tour or something like that, you get a bunch of interviews and they are basically the same questions, the same answers and stuff like that. So this was a little bit extra, so it was a little bit more fun, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. As you mentioned, King is on tour. He is doing a lot of cities and he's about halfway through it. He's been in Jersey City, Sewickley, I think it's
Sewickley.
Sewickley, Dayton, Charleston, Nashville, and today he will be in Louisville. And there's been some photos and some clips, and from what it seems to be is that he's about on stage for about an hour or 15 minutes or an hour and a half, telling stories, joking, and stuff like that. He reads sometimes from End of Watch. At one city, I don't remember exactly which one it was, he read from the upcoming short story Music Room that will be released in December. And at one of the events, I don't remember exactly which one it was, he was introduced as Richard Bachman. So it seems like a good tour so far. There are no book signings at these events, which some people seem annoyed about. And I read some comments as late as today that someone had been to one of these events yesterday, I think, and was very disappointed that King hadn't stopped and signed their books and stuff on the way to or from the event. I think it was to, maybe. Basically thought that the trip had been pretty much useless. So, and I think that if you have that expectations and if you know beforehand that there won't be a book signing, I mean, why would you go then if you would only go because you want to get a book signed when that's not going to happen? So then you have to. I mean,
like you're beat before you get out the door, like.
Yeah. So I mean, then you just have to blame yourself for any misery you have by that. But I mean,
yeah.
It all basically depends on what you have for expectations for this show. I mean, just watching King on stage, reading and talking and joking, I mean, that's a treat, definitely, that I would do any day
for sure.
of the year if I got the chance. Of course, I would love to have a book signing as well, but if you know that's not going to happen, then why be disappointed that it won't happen? I mean, come on. That's just stupid. And there are 400 pre-signed books at each event that are given out randomly, and some are lucky. I know some, I think there were 4 people going and 3 of them got signed books and 1 didn't. And then others haven't gotten any, but that's the thing. I mean, King is out for like 11 days straight, doing this every night for 11 days, and he's not like a rock star or do this for a year at a time. I mean,
and he's not a spring chicken anymore either.
No. So I mean, we should be very happy that he's doing this. And I mean, going to this and coming home disappointed, I mean, don't go there. Let someone else go there that will enjoy it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's great that he's do this. What I was hoping for, because there is a Q&A on most of these events, it seems, and I know that some of them have been where they go around with the mic and they get to answer, and some have gotten to sign notes and put in the box before the event.
Oh, yeah.
But so far, no one seems to have asked what the next book will be and when it will be out. And that is very unresponsible from you who go there. Ask him this. We want to know.
Hans is giving his listeners shit. All right.
Yeah.
It's a logical question, but yeah. I'm surprised Steve hasn't mentioned something himself, because he's usually pretty good at planting seeds for what he's doing down the road. Yeah. I mean, he talked about the Owen book, but that's not a solo project, so.
No. So I don't know if we're going to have this out before the tour is over, but if we do, and if you're going, ask him.
Please.
Let us know. Yes, we want to know.
Yeah.
And that's pretty interesting. We've talked about this before. This is actually the first time in many, many, many years that we don't know what the next book is going to be called, what it's going to be about, and when it's going to be released. We have always known at least one book, sometimes even 2 or 3 books ahead, but now we don't know. So that's interesting and a little bit annoying.
Yeah, I don't know if he knows himself. It seems like he's still germinating ideas, because I do think somebody asked him, maybe not at one of the book signings, but maybe at one of the TV interviews or something like that. And I think he's just saying that he's still kicking ideas around. But yeah, it's weird that we're not going to get 2 King fiction books this year. I think we can say that with a pretty fair certainty now.
Yeah, there won't be I mean, if there were to be one more book announced, it has happened. We should say that it has happened that he is released. Like Blockade Billy was announced just, I don't know, maybe a month before it was released. So it could happen, but I would say that it probably won't be another book this year, because if it was released like a regular book through Simon & Schuster, they would like to promote it, of course, to get it sold and stuff like that. So then we would know about it if it would be coming this year. Right. So if there's anything coming, it will be some kind of surprise book from a smaller publisher or something like that. So I think it's fairly safe to say that one.
Yeah, he does have that non-fiction piece coming out, but that's which is fine. But I just prefer a fiction book.
Yeah, and that's
feed me.
Yeah, and the non-fiction book isn't really a King book. I think that's more a book about the main university, and King has been a part, maybe a big part of the book, but it's not a King book. It's a book about the university with other people writing as well. So yeah.
So do you want to talk about the book he wrote with Owen?
Yeah, that is very interesting. I think we have heard for quite some time now that he and Owen were working on something. Know exactly what it was or anything like that, but in Charleston, when he stopped there for the tour, he mentioned that he and Owen had collaborated on a book that is set in a woman's prison in West Virginia, and a first draft had been finished, and the title is Sleeping Beauties. That's pretty much anything we know about the book. I assume it's not a collection of short stories or something like that. I assume it's a
bunch of cells.
Yeah. I think we can assume that it's a full book, and if there's a first draft done by it now, we won't see it. I guess we won't see it until maybe late next year at the earliest, I think, because they would have to go and go through the book or the draft at least once more, and then it goes to the publisher and stuff like that. So I wouldn't expect it until maybe fall next year, something like that. But it sounds interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to end up being some sort of a modern take on the original Sleeping Beauty fairy tale. But probably not, but we'll have to see. But I enjoyed Owen's other book. We're all in this together, so I'm really curious to see what he and his dad will do, especially since his writing style is much different than Joe's.
Yeah, and I think that would be the most interesting, because they I mean, when King and Joe wrote, their books are very similar in style and type and everything like that. So I think here we have 2 very different authors, I think, and will be very interesting to see what they can do when they work together.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, and that's it for the news for this time.
This is great. What's our job? We'd like drive around, pick up stiffs or what?
It's time for reviews from the Nightshift.
So, now we're going to set up the movie version of Cell, and This has been a movie that's been sitting on a shelf for quite a while, which is always raises red flags. And now that you and I have both seen this movie, Hans, were those red flags warranted?
I would say that they aren't flags, they are sheets that covers the universe. I think they are very, very big flags. You shouldn't spoil what you think about a movie at the ending of a review, but I must say that I'm very disappointed about this movie. It's not at all what I expected. And even though I had low expectations, because as you said, it's been sitting on a shelf for 2 years without finding a distributor, and that is not a good sign. So I had very low expectations of it, and still I was very disappointed in it. So, well, it sure didn't live up to the book.
Yeah,
I think
we should mention before we get too far in here, this is going to be full of spoilers. Yeah. So if you haven't read the book and you're planning to see the movie, please be aware of that. And I agree with you totally. It was interesting because I watched it with my wife, and we had slightly different points of where we thought the movie went off the rails. Like even though it's not in the book, I actually thought the airport stuff was pretty good. But my wife said that point where they got when they were hiding by the river, and then all of a sudden the zombies started doing this phone noises out of their mouths. She said that's when the story just started to go sideways for her, and she lost interest in it, because she said that whole sequence from the airport getting through the town, she thought that was really well done. But then after that, it just really went off the rails very quickly for her. I was okay with that piece because having read the book, I knew that was coming. But for me, where it really started to go downhill is once they got to the bar.
Yeah, that entire scene was so bad.
Yeah,
the bar scene. I mean, if you're in the situation they are, you don't act like the people they found in the bar do, and you don't sit in the corner and get drunk when things like this happen. I think it was so bad. And if you haven't read the book, this isn't really going to spoil much for you, because they changed so much from the book. And what really pisses me off, sorry about that, I had to say it, is that they change things without giving any good reason for it. I mean, sure, it worked having the scene where the outbreak is in the airport, but why put it there instead of on the streets of Boston? When they could much as easily have done that, because in later scenes we see the street of Boston where things are destroyed and stuff like that. So they change a lot of things. They change when they go home to his name, the Cusack character, Clay. They go to Clay's house. In the book, they go to Tom's house. Why? And when they find what's the girl's name? Alice. Yeah, she's his neighbor, so they know each other a little bit before that. Why change that? And they skip the hotel scene. All in all, I can see that they might want to do that because they want to speed things up. But they are doing so much, and at the same time they are struggling to get some of the things exactly like in the book, like with the Pixie Dark and Pixie Light, when she runs into the post and her head is all mashed up. Mm-hmm. When that scene comes, they do everything they can to make it exactly as the book. But then they change other things for no apparent reason, and that really annoys me when they do stuff like that. So, and I guess that's maybe something that people who haven't read the book won't care about because they don't know it. So, but one other thing that really bugs me was that things moved along so very quickly, and they resolved everything. They know why things were happening, just like in seconds. They understood everything. So it was like, what? How can you be that smart? How do you know this? Yeah. Have you read the book? Yeah. So, well, they fail in so many ways in this movie. I'm sorry to say that, but the Samuel L. Jackson playing Tom, I think he really destroys that character, because I think in the book he is a very likable character who you feel for, and you really he is sensitive, and he's scared, and he's this is really not his environment, and In the movie, he just brings out the machine gun and shoots whatever moves. So he's totally different from the book. So I'm sorry, it didn't work for me. Now I'm gonna let you say what you're thinking.
Okay, I pretty well agree with most of what you said. It's just not, it fails on so many levels. First of all, with the characters, you do get to know who John Cusack's character is all about, and to a certain degree, you get to know what Alice's character is about. But after that, like, the drop off is pretty steep. Even Samuel Jackson's character, you don't really know much about, other than the fact that he was married at one time. But all the other characters, like when they come in, like you go into that bar scene and they don't introduce anybody. They all sit down and they just start talking like they know each other, but we're all lost. We don't know anybody's names. And, the book, like coming in, making this movie, you have to know that the zombie genre has really been done to death at this point. So if you're going to do something with it, you have to establish the stuff. So like the jump of the initial wave of zombie like characters to the stuff when they start doing the stuff where they sound like phones noises coming out of their head or mouths and whatnot. The jump is so quick. Like you said, the story goes so fast, even though the movie felt like it lasted forever. but there's no logical consistency to the story. So because like my wife said, like watching the first bit when they're running through the city and trying to get away from all the zombies and that, she said that was kind of cool because that was something, it's a zombie movie, so you can relate to that stuff. But then when they started turning into these walking cell phones or modems, then she just said then the whole tension of the story was gone because she said that the zombies kept changing into something else and you never understood what they were changing from and into. So there was, just kind of like, I don't know any of these characters. I don't know what's happening to the zombies. Like that scene where they run into the guy with the ice cream truck. I can't remember his name now. I think it was Roscoe, but maybe not. But he's got like all the plastic explosives and stuff in the ice cream truck and that. And the girl, you don't understand anything about where they're coming from. You don't realize for quite a while that this ice cream truck driver is. Mind is being manipulated by the cell signals, and why is only his mind being manipulated and nobody else's? And all these questions, and then the ending was just so terrible. Like he's driving this ice cream truck, John Cusack's character, out to this field where all these zombies are doing like circles around cell phone towers. Why? We have no idea why. And the movie never establishes a villain.
No.
They kind of try to do a fake out with his wife, who's sort of dressed up the same way as the character. And again, that character never says much. so you have no idea what his motives are. So there's no understanding of motivations here. And then he drives out, John Cusack's character, Clay, drives out to the cell tower. And for some reason, he gets through these people. Why they're not attacking him, you don't know. And then when he gets back out, his son just happens to be there, like just like out of the blue, and his son is a zombie. And so when he blows up the tower, you don't see the transformation of his son back into a normal boy. And Samuel Jackson's character and Owen Teague's character, they basically just walk out of the movie. like that's it, like go paint some signs and maybe we'll catch up. But like that, talk about unsatisfying exits for characters. And then I always have to kind of laugh. It's a cliche now, and it's just so where are we going, Dad? He says, we're going to Canada. Any disaster movie, zombie movie, like World War Z. I'm telling you, people, if you want to stay safe, you should come to Canada. Why they don't think we have cell phones here, I don't know, but because I got news for you. We do have cell phones.
And I think actually the only good thing I think there is about this movie is actually the ending. And as I don't think it's a good ending. It's a terrible ending. But the good thing is that I didn't see that ending coming. So I was,
Well,
I
how
was,
could
I
you?
was,
It made no sense.
no. So I was surprised, and actually that was the only time during this entire movie that I felt something.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, oh, yeah, well, they at least they tried to do something that surprised me, and I didn't see that coming. It was a terrible ending, but it surprised me because I didn't see it coming. And I mean,
'Cause
when
you
that
didn't
is
think
the
it could be
best
that
thing in a
terrible.
movie, it's probably a terrible movie.
And even
Yeah.
what else was annoying was the opening credits. Like these black bars would come across the screen, cut off part of the picture when they say,
Yeah.
starring John Cusack, and then you couldn't see anything behind it because that black bar was filling up like a part of the screen, and it was just so annoying.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
just
And
so annoying.
one thing that they really did change, actually, that I don't really understand why they want to do that either, is that for some reason this the Raggedy Man that is the main villain, if you want to call him that.
Yeah.
He is, instead of being something that came from these zombies, he's all of a sudden he's the main character from Clay's comic. All of a sudden his comic has come to life, and
that was an interesting
book,
idea, but they never flesh it out.
No, and in the book it's almost the other way around, that he see him and he draws a picture of him, and the other recognize him from their dreams. But now all of a sudden, it's his character that's doing this. Why? How? And as you say, we never get any explanation to that. It's just
For anything.
It's just so bad.
We don't get, except for John Cusack's, desire to reunite with his son. That's the only thing that's given any sort of explanation. Everything else doesn't make any sense. Like the whole school sequence with Stacy Keach. And boy, what a waste of a good actor. And I hope that Charles Arday is happy that was played by Stacy Keach in this movie, because
he's probably happy that it wasn't more in the movie than it was.
Yeah, because I really don't know any of these characters' names, like except for the main three. And like Owen Teague, who's going to be in it. His character, the only thing I remember about his character is he wore a red toque all the time. There was no joining hardly between any of the characters except for maybe Alice and John. That was kind of a nice scene, but then the staging of how she gets killed was done terribly, because you didn't even know at first what had happened, right? It was just kind of like, what?
No.
And then...
And you didn't really care about them either, so you just, okay, she's gone.
Yeah.
and that's terrible when you don't care about the main characters. Then you really have lost the viewers. But
for sure,
two other things that really annoys me as well, or a lot of things, but two things, is that I got the sense that some of the scenes that were supposed to be really scary and gory where people change and they beat each other, and like Pixie, Dark or Light, whichever it was, ran into the wall and stuff like that. They almost became like comic. You almost thought they were funny, even though they're bloody and gory and everything like that. But they weren't scary, I think. They were more like in a comedy when people stumble and fall and stuff like that, but just they are drenched in blood. So I think they failed pretty much with those things as well, and that is one thing that would have made the tone of the movie so much much better if they had really made you afraid of these people instead of almost laughing at them. And then the other thing is, and this is probably just me, but why did they put that ugly hat on John Cusack? It annoyed me all movie along. He pulls it on in the airport where he's inside.
I have an explanation for that.
Pull that horrible cap.
I do. I didn't come up with it myself. I have to give credit to my wife. I said, "Why is he putting that toque on?" And he says, "Well, that's because it's the same color as the leather seats in the airport. So I guess he felt it would make him blend in more with the seats and not stand out as much." So I thought, okay, that makes sense. I can buy that. But yeah, you kind of like, wow. I just happen to have, like, I don't know, why would he have a toque? It wasn't like a cold place. There was no snow. It wasn't like, it didn't make any sense. So,
no.
But then what else? Not like we said, nothing about this movie
No.
did. So yeah, this
Like
is
much else in the movie.
I mean, and for myself, the book itself is Stephen King's nod to the zombie genre, and to me, it's a B movie kind of book, right? Like it's not one of his top books. I don't think it's one of his top books. I don't know. Maybe you feel differently, but to me, I don't think he meant it to be taken. This is like supposed to be like a kind of a tongue-in-cheek poke at society's reliance on technology and marrying it with a zombie genre thing. So I don't think it's one of his best books, and
I don't think the book is one of his best either. I actually listened to it on audio just before I watched the movie, and
right,
it has its weak spots with the zombie thing, because they aren't really zombies. They are something else, and that something else is, I don't know, it's missing something for being really what it needs to be. So I think already in the book the story itself is a bit weak in some things, and then when they do the movie they totally ruins it.
And that's the big thing for me. Like, I know sometimes you want a story where bad things just happen with because they just do, like Friday the 13th or something like that, or a Nightmare on Elm Street, or there's some of these home invasion movies. But if you're going to set up a story where the whole cause of the zombies is due to some sort of like virus that's put on a cell phone, like, where did that virus come from? Was it just an accidental thing? Or was it created by a group of terrorists or a bunch of kids? Like, that's I can see some horror stories you don't need to know why the bad things happen, but when you set up something like this, it needs that explanation. But otherwise, you're kind of not, you don't know what the rules are of the game are. Like with, and that's a big thing with monster movies. You kind of learn, or you usually learn what the strengths and weaknesses of monsters and what the rules of the games are. Certain things, like with zombies, you have to kill them by shooting them in the head. Vampires can't come out at night. Werewolves only come out with a full moon. So there was no ground rules established for these types of zombies, which I think is one of the things that always kind of hobbles that book for me. I know some other people have said that they have trouble with the technology and the idea of comparing the brain to a computer and stuff like that. But I'm fine with that. It's just, I don't know why but at least this story has an ending, as far as the zombie thing is, where like something like with The Walking Dead, where it just goes on and never ends. That's something that irritates the hell out of me. So it's built on a shaky premise, or not a shaky premise, but a incomplete premise, and that always hobbles the storytelling if you don't know the rules. And, I think that was evident in the book, and because of that, in the movie, when they tried to compress that, when they started changing the characters of the way the zombies acted, then you're just like, well, you're just sitting there as a viewer and say, well, now anything can happen because I don't know what the rules are. So, and without those rules to put stakes against, then it's very hard for you to get invested in the characters, which were not ever introduced well in this movie at all. So it's a real mess. We worried about it being delayed, and now that when you see it, you know why.
Yeah, and I think besides the fact that they changed a lot of things for no apparent reason from the book, I think that those who have read the book will be most disappointed in that they have actually destroyed the three main characters. I think Tom, Clay, and Alice in the book. No matter what you think about the story in itself, these three characters are, at least I think so, very, very well drawn, and they are people you care about, and you feel sad when Alice dies.
Oh, it was a shock, right?
Things like that. In here, and in here you don't care anything about if she lives or die, and it's I think that's the biggest mistake. You don't know about the characters, and if you don't, then I mean there's not much left to be done with it.
Yep. Yep. So there you go, folks. We're not very happy with this. If we're wrong and you liked it, please tell us why and what we're missing. But I really don't think anybody could really praise this movie considering how much it doesn't make any sense. And it's not making sense from a perspective of not telling us what's going on. so yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
not really well shot. They use a lot of shaky cam for the action scenes, and yeah, it's just it's got a real. It really felt to me like they spent 75% of their budget in the airport, and then after that, everything else was done on the cheap.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the special effects when they burn all those bodies in the football field. The fire, it must have been added in Photoshop afterwards or something like that. It looks very fake, and I think it's no. This is a movie you really don't need to see actually. Right now, I would rather see Children of the Corn 4 again than this one. That says a lot. Or maybe even an episode of
I wouldn't go that far.
No, that might be stretching it. But
and
yeah.
It's tough because
too bad.
I like John Cusack as an actor, so it's tough to see him be, because I think he was like an executive producer on this, so he's obviously a big King fan, and he pushed hard to get this made. So it's obvious the money wasn't there to do this story proper justice, and they should have almost done it like a bottle, like stuck in one room or one building kind of thing, and left it at that instead of doing this cross country thing, which they obviously couldn't afford. So yeah, pretty disappointing.
Yep.
So
well, it's out now, and we have seen it, so we don't have to wonder about it anymore. So that's a good thing. Maybe that's the best thing about it.
Yeah. So there you go. That's our thoughts on it. Let us know what you think and if you agree or disagree.
It's just a jump to the left.
Okay, so it's time to talk The Dead Zone.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Why don't you set this up?
So this one is an old classic. It's been quite long since I actually read this one. I don't know about you when you read it the last time, but I think I read it maybe in late 80s, early 90s maybe. I actually don't think I have reread this one since then. So
okay, I think I read it a couple of years ago, but it's been a while, and because of the TV series and that and the movie, the need to revisit it hasn't felt as strong.
No.
So there's a lot of good things about this novel, and I can't remember what order I read this in, but I believe that I read this before I read The Stand. I think maybe this was my third book by him. But this is the one that solidified with me and made me a constant reader, because I just was blown away by the concept of taking a Lee Harvey Oswald character and turning him into the hero of a story. I just thought that reversal flip was just fantastic. And it's a story cliche or motif, I guess is a better word, of taking you're putting yourself in the perspective of a character that everybody else thinks is really bad, but you find out because they're doing the right thing at their personal cost to their own happiness and whatnot, that they're willing to pay that price just for the greater good. So that's the kind of a story that I really like quite a bit, and I think with this one, which was a small story but with a big impact, I really love this book quite a bit, and I'm so glad that this is one of the ones that has had pretty good adaptations done of it, both in the movie and even the first 4 seasons of the TV series. I thought were really quite well done.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the TV series actually succeeded in first kind of adapting the book and then keeping it going, and even though it was like these one case a week kind of thing where you have different cases where he sees a sign or to predict the future, it still worked, and you cared about the characters. It was good cast, So I think, as you say, it worked definitely for the first seasons. Then it started to going downhill. Then they made a break, and then they came back with a terrible last season to try to close things, which instead just left you with a bitter taste for it. I think it would have been better to just end it as it was, actually, even though it didn't really end because it was cancelled. So but the book, as you said, it's a good book, and it's a kind of different book because it isn't really a horror story. It is a horror story in some way, but not the traditional horror story. I mean, it's horror more like something that could actually happen. I mean, you could be in an accident, you could be in a coma, and maybe not waking up and being able to predict people's future. But I mean, you could actually be in a coma and wake up. I don't remember exactly how many years later, but a lot of years later, and just the fear of your life having moved on, and you have been in this coma, and people you know have gone off. Maybe some have dead, some have done other things, and like his girlfriend has found someone else and is married and stuff like that. So I think it's a very scary story, but in a different way than a horror story. And I think that was what grabbed me with this story, that it felt like this can actually happen, even though it's somewhat supernatural. But and I think this might be the first book of King's that I read that had that in it, actually. So
yeah, it's one of his more first grounded books. Something that he's done a lot more of later on.
Yeah,
Johnny Smith is such a tragic figure that you can't really help but feel empathy for the character, and I like the this whole concept of this guy basically going to sleep and then waking up and finding his whole life is passed him by, and so he's like a person out of time. So yeah, it's, to me, it's a timeless story in that perspective, and I haven't read End of Watch yet. Actually, I'm going to be starting that next week. I have a feeling that there's kind of some surface similarities between that story and this one about with the coma and things like that. So I'm be curious to see if that turns out to be correct or not. This was one of the first King books that Bev Vincent's historical perspective article tells us about, that this is one of the first novels where King starts to tie his whole universe, fictional universe, together, because there's references to Carrie in this book. Somebody says that they thought he was like the girl that could start fires and things like that. So it's interesting that the seeds for the United Universe begin with the Dead Zone, and even King, I think, for a long time was very proud of this novel. And as we just sort of alluded to, he called this his first real novel that was plot-driven and complex. So so it really marries the character story with this, kind of like what if big picture idea. What if you could go back in time and kill Hitler? Would you do it, kind of thing? So from a science fictional perspective and a character perspective, this was the book that really worked for me. And eerily, now it's today with what's going on in the world, there's some stuff that's in this book that you just kind of roll your eyes at when you first read it, but now it's the whole Greg Stilson character has become eerily prescient as to what's happening today in the United States. So I think that's one of the constant things that really blows me out my mind about King stuff. His ability to forecast things. Probably the thing that he's the least willing to talk about, of course, is this whole concept of school shootings and whatnot, which again, this weekend, there's been another terrible shooting in Orlando, Florida. Yeah. He's talked about in The Running Man, flying a plane into a building. He's basically created the buzzwords for a rabid dog with Cujo, and like this whole thing about game shows and reality TV with the long walk, which, geez, Frank Darabont, you have to make that movie. It is so relevant to today. But it all kind of started with this book. This is where, so far, this has been the first book that's really sort of been an echo chamber of what's happening in the future, and we're seeing it come to true today. Who knows? Someday we might see elements of Carrie come true, but this is the book that did it for me. So I can't say enough about this book. I really like it quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think this isn't this the first book where you use Castle Rock as well?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So this is a great and very important book in King's lists of books. And I also think that there are so many stories in this book. I mean, the Castle Rock Killer and is it the sheriff? Is it Dodd or what's his
Bannerman?
name? No, the evil one.
Yeah.
I think you could write a book just about what happens to him and how he becomes who he is and stuff like that. And as it's stated here, also the other sheriff, we get to see him in Needful Things later on, and so there's a lot of things in this book that you could expand, and you can go in different angles from this one. So it's a lot in one book, both story-wise, historical for King, and it's feel like a lot of things starting with this one. So it's definitely a book that I think I will have to reread sometime pretty soon.
Yeah, it's I think as we're seeing with over at Stephen King Revisited, the guest article is done by Chet Williamson, and I love he calls it the Dead Zone, Aging Gracefully, and I think this is a novel and a story that is timeless, not just in the theme of being a man out of time, but I think it really follows a 3-act structure quite well, where you have the setup with Johnny becoming gifted with this power, and then the struggle in the middle with him to accept this power, and finally he makes the courageous and hard choice in the 3rd act. So it's just a really well put together novel, and technology things aside, it still holds quite well together because there's reoccurring themes in here, and we're seeing it happening today with power and pop culture being able to help decide very important things, things of that nature. So and King also had elements of about the religious right, because Johnny's mother is a religious fanatic, and with very right-leaning politics. So he predicted that this type of stuff could happen down the road, and we're seeing that quite a bit with the advent of the internet, and everybody's now provided with a pulpit to preach whatever they want to talk about. So there's a lot to like in this book, and I really like Chet Williams' column on it. I highly recommend you read it because I agree with him. This is a story that has aged gracefully and pretty impressive. Because I think we can say after King's accidents, a lot of his books, as he got seemingly more serious about his writing, I think he's really worked hard to up the literary level of his stories, and that includes making them more tightly plotted and whatnot for the most part. And I think The Dead Zone is a book that you could pull out of his early work and plop it in after he had the accident, and I don't think you would really notice that it was an earlier book unless somebody told you, because I think it's that well written.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and as you say, if you change maybe some stuff about the technology and update that, this book could have been released today, and it would still be as timely as it is. So definitely, I think so. And I also want to push extra for the Bev Vincent's historical essay on the books, and on I think those are almost the most exciting things for me to read about these revisited things, because you learn Bev has so much knowledge about how things were done, what mindset King was in, where he was with his publisher, and everything like that. So it's I think it's would mostly, or the simplest way to describe it is that see it as if you rent a movie on DVD and you have these behind the scenes films that are sometimes added. This is like that, but about the book and about King, where it was when he wrote it. So I definitely think you should check that out as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And just closing off our revisited look is Richard Chizmar's column, and he touches a lot of the same things that we said. He really likes the way the parents are written in this story, and I think a lot of people can relate to this kind of dynamic in their family, where one parent is kind of like the one you always go to if you want to get something, and the other one's more the disciplinarian or more strict or fanatical. And I think King caught that dynamic quite well. And the whole Dodds storyline was a nice twist, again, that the cop turned out to be the killer. There's just a real sense of a really well-written book here, a very tragic but really well-written book. And I just think that it's a book that is surprising that I still can't really wrap my head around that he wrote this one so early in his career. It seems like the work of a more mature Stephen King than the one that was writing the other things. But then, of course, The Stand came before this, and I guess people who were reading him in the correct order probably thought this was a lightweight follow-up to that book. But for my money, this has been one of my favorite books and I actually kind of like the smallness of it, because I do appreciate the epicness of a book like The Stand, obviously, but sometimes it's just taking a normal person and putting them in extraordinary circumstances can really work out to be a pretty cool story. And I don't know why, but with that little bit of science fictional, what if you could kill Hitler subtext to it, I really just like this story quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's one of King's strengths, that you never really know what the next book is going to be, because it could be a horror, it could be a detective, it could be a science fiction, it could be anything. So, and I think that is what has made him been so famous and so big for so long time, that you don't get bored of him, because he does these different types of books. So it's almost like a new one each. You don't get stuck in the same type of books. So a genre. Yeah. So I think that show, as you say, The Stand came before this one, and that's a totally different book, both in size and story wise. And then you have this one. So once again, it shows his how big he is as a writer.
Yeah. So that's our Stephen King revisited look at The Dead Zone. It's always nice to end on an up note, and definitely The Dead Zone is one of many people's favorite books. And again, please visit the Stephen King Revisited site, where you can see the great historical articles that Bev's doing, and be surprised by the posts that Richard puts up, as well as the guest columnists that they get for each story or book. So we look forward to continuing going through following them and promoting the whole concept. And I'm sure that there's a plan for all of these columns to be collected in a book at the end when they've gone through everything, which will be a pretty cool book to have, and a great reference book as well, because of Bev's historical articles. And plus you get it won't be a dry thing, because you'll get the feedback and thoughts of and emotions that these stories generated for so many other people, which is cool, because when you read them, you can really see and feel a lot of your own personal experiences in those columns. So highly recommended that you guys check those out.
Yeah. Okay, so we are nearing the end of our episode 60. This was a fun episode. We had Cell, who was a bad movie. We had The
Cell
Dead
is a
Zone.
cell.
Yeah, exactly. And we have The Dead Zone, who is a good book and a good TV show and a good movie.
Yep.
So we had good and bad this time.
We sure did. And it gives me a great title for the podcast, and it'll be Cell Falls into the Dead Zone. So.
Great.
There you go, right? All right. So again, we're at the end of this podcast, and we don't know what we're going to be doing for the next one. I guess it'll be maybe our end of watch review. That might be too soon.
Yeah, we'll see. I have read it, and I guess you're going to read it pretty soon. So
yeah,
and I think a lot of people have read it or started reading it at least. So
yeah, so we'll pencil that for the next one, unless we get some suggestions from our listeners. Hans and I are working on the technical maneuverings of how to do a live podcast or just a live chat with us both visually visible, which might be scarier than anything you've read by Stephen King or seen, but there you go. So we're working on that, and trying to find out the easiest way to do it without having to spend a lot of money on it. Right now it looks like we might just be doing a Skype hangout, which unfortunately limits us to like 25 people. If it proves popular and gets bigger, we might, repeat it, and we might have to look at something a little more elaborate, maybe some sort of YouTube live stream or whatnot. But for now, this is just an experiment, and I'm not going to spend too much time and money on it if it's not going to go anywhere. But that should be fun. I know, Hans, you've done a couple of Facebook chats, and I've heard those have gone well.
Yeah, those are really fun. It's fun to interact with people live and getting comments and questions and stuff like that.
Yep.
So I think that this is a fun way to do it, and I think that would challenge us a bit as well, because we don't know what's going to happen, and we're going to leave our safety net with no retakes and stuff like that. So I think that could be fun.
We don't do that, do we?
No, we don't. So, but please comment if you think this is a good idea, or if you think it's too scary to show us live on where you can see us as well as hear us. So comment on it and let us know what you think about it.
Yep.
So, but that's coming up for a later day. We're going to see if we can fix out all the technical issues and see where it happens, where it lands.
All right. And did you want to give an update on contests or anything, since you're running so many of them?
No, the last two has ended, and I'm going to run another one that will start early July, maybe the 1st or the 2nd. And for that one, I have gotten a great prize, which I'm not allowed to reveal just yet. But it is safe to say that every Stephen King fan would like to have it.
Cool.
So look for that. And also going on is, of course, the one where you can send in a picture of yourself and Lilja's library. That one will be going on for all this year, celebrating the 20-year anniversary of the site. And there's also a prize in it for that one, and that's something that hasn't been announced yet, so that will be cool. And I think you would like to have that one as well, so it's no reason to not send in a photo already.
Yeah. If it goes by size, I think I'm in the lead. But
yeah, you have the biggest TV so far.
Big TV screen picture of your website. Yeah.
Yep.
And don't forget, Hans also has his Cafe Press store up, and you can get Marv mugs and Marv T-shirts. And is there anything else, Marvy?
Yeah, you can get a lot of things with Marv on them.
Okay.
I think you can get pretty much anything that they have in their stores.
Alrighty.
And
so anything else?
If there's something missing, you can always let me know, and I will put it up there.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's enough for self-promotion for one podcast.
All right.
Yep.
A lot of fun talking to you about all this stuff, Hans. Do you have anything else you want to add, or is that it?
No, just have your seatbelt on when you watch the cell. Leave the couch until it's done.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That's it for this podcast.
Yep. So until next time.
Stay safe.
But
stay scared.
That's my cell impersonation, if you weren't sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought you fell asleep.